What is up, everybody? WJracer here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So let's get this started. We are going to be reviewing the book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So yeah, this is a bit different from my normal gaming reviews, so we'll see how this goes. Let's start off with the fact. Alright, so the facts about this book. So the book Frankenstein was written by Mary Shelley, and so the basic plot is it starts off by telling it is the story of Victor Frankenstein, who created this, who is a science nerd. So basically this guy Victor Frankenstein creates a creature that ends up having his own story, and it's tied in with the wireframe. So it starts off somewhere in the Arctic Circle with this character named Walton, he's writing letters to his sister. Yeah, he's writing letters to his sister, and then Walton finds Frank, who ends up being Victor Frankenstein, in the north. And so Victor tells him about his story, his life story, of how he ended up creating this monster. And so the first half of the book is Victor telling his life story, his childhood, his parents' childhood, his sister Elizabeth, his adopted sister Elizabeth, and it later goes on to him going into university in Ingolstadt, and then moving on to where he gets interested in chemistry. Now, after he gets interested in chemistry, he starts focusing really heavily on the idea that of life and death. This is a really common motif found in this book, the idea of life and death. So what ends up happening is Victor will gather what he calls like the most beautiful body parts, or sews them all together into a creature, and then waits for a dark, stormy night, waits for lightning to hit, which then brings the creature to life. And once this creature is brought to life, Victor sees that he has created, in his eyes, a monster, someone so ugly that he couldn't bear to think that he was the one who created it. So he abandoned it. Even when the monster tried to reach out to him, even though it was like, think about it like this. He's a child, and he was abandoned by his father. That's that's kind of the analogy at play here. So then after that, the monster runs away, Victor runs out of his apartment, only to find that and spends the night in like the yard of where he's living. And then he ends up getting sick as a result and also he hadn't been communicating with his family at all, so they had sent his friend Henry to go make sure he was alright, who ended up having to care for him while he was sick. And this section of the book took place over 2 years. So while these 2 years after the monster had been running, after the monster ran away, this comes up in the second half of the book, because the monster comes back, confronts Victor far later I believe in the mountains, and the monster then proceeds to tell his story of what happened while he was out, how he discovered nature, and how he met this family that ended up throwing him out in the end, but. Yeah, and so to the point where he's rejected so much that he resorts to killing and trying to get revenge on Victor. And then the third half of the book the monster wants Victor to make a female counterpart because he wants to be loved by one person. So then Victor has to make this very big decision, and ends up not going through with it, which in the end gets both the creature and Victor killed. because the creature's killing his family and his joy. Well, and as a result, Victor Frankenstein devotes the rest of his life to trying to kill this creature, makes it up into the north when he meets Walton, and dies in the north. And then the monster expresses that he finally wants to die, once he sees that Victor is dead, and he wants the misery to end. So one thing that is very common in this book is imagery. Mary Shelley loves to use imagery in the books. In her books, like a perfect example is on chapter. I believe it's chapter 11. It's the first part of the monster story, where they describe the situation that the monster's in. Soon a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise from among the trees. I gazed with a kind wonder. It moved slowly, but it enlightened my path, and I again went out in search of berries. See, that's one of the main examples. That's a really good example of imagery used in this story. Another thing, there are some more common motifs other than the idea of life and death. Another motif and also theme. I'm mixing it up sometimes, but some themes. The idea of the adopted/abandoned child. Frankenstein's mother was taken in by his father as the wife, and Elizabeth was adopted as well. As the monster being abandoned, and Frankenstein's mother was abandoned when her father died. And also the idea that the pursuit of knowledge can be dangerous, and you can go too far. So now comes to the point of where I say my opinions of this book. Well, be right back. And now for the opinions. So my opinions of this book is for one thing, I have a bias. This is not the kind of genre that I prefer. It's not my favorite kind of genre, but that is my bias. I am saying my bias up front. For me, out of other books I have read this year, it didn't really get me into the book. I didn't really get super into Frankenstein. And it is very descriptive. The writing is quite clear. It's very proper. And that's probably because of its age. The age is probably the main reason I didn't enjoy it too much. The age of the book definitely reflects. You can definitely notice how dated it can be at certain points in the story. Also, it kind of claims to be horror, but I didn't find it wasn't like some horror stories today. But that's probably because it was horror for its time. I personally never got really hooked to it. I never really not hooked like To Kill a Mockingbird, but I can see its potential. And in the end, it was an alright story. It wasn't it wasn't super bad at all. It's just you gotta factor in the idea of how long ago this was written. This book was published in 1816. This book has been around for, let's see, we got 100, and 2016. We got we got 1816, 1916 is 100 years, 2016. So this book is 200 years old. This book has been around for 200 years, and we're still reading it today in 2017. Come on, that's got to show how well this book has held up. That says something right there. However, there are some things the main things I don't like about this book is it sometimes over-elaborates, kind of drags on a bit too long for a chapter. These are a pretty short chapter, but like, you get a lot of description where it kind of doesn't need to be, where it would be better off spent in a different part of the book, I guess, is the best way I could put it. But, I don't know. It's good. It's alright. It's not my favorite, but it's not the worst either. So, there's my opinion. In conclusion, I would recommend, if you want to pick this up in the library, go ahead. I wouldn't recommend buying a new copy, to be honest. I'd feel like it would be better if you just got a copy from the library. Because to be honest, I don't see myself rereading this book. And again, that's with my own personal bias of this is not my genre of choice. My genre of choice is sci-fi dystopia. So, yeah. So in conclusion, this is an alright book. I would recommend reading it. It is a good book to read. I wouldn't put down money on this. And it's also good to really understand how they thought back in the days of when they were writing, how the Romantic era played. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this very different kind of review. My first time ever doing one of these, so I've tried. I've tried my best, but alright. Bye-bye.